Happy spring. I'm TM
It is.
Martin from I'm TM Martin from Politico Coffee, hosting solo today. Robin will return next Saturday, March 27th, when we host our special expungement forum on Michigan's new clean slate law, which will be rolling out soon next month on April 11th, featuring Congresswoman Debbie Dingell and an all-star lineup of state and federal officials. But today, the focus is on the art and science of polling and public opinion. And we're so glad to have with us today Ed Sarpolus. He's the founder and executive director of Target Insyght at the premier polling firm based in Lansing, Michigan, Michigan's capital. Hi, Ed. How
Well,
are you and what's brewing?
I'm doing good. It's beautiful. I talked to my mom, but obviously, I'm from Detroit, so I'll be back in Detroit this week a lot. So it's looking good all over the state from what I can see. It's enjoyable to be able to go outside after our talk today.
It is fantastic weather in Michigan in the 50s and bright and sunny. And yes, it is the first day in spring. Ed, it's been about 3 years since we last spoke on the air anyway, on my old show, Politics and Power. But one thing I do want to point out from your official bio is that you are a strategist, entrepreneurial thinker, and deal maker who has had great success crafting and implementing strategies to influence legislation, political action, and public policy discussions in Michigan and throughout the United States, as well as for several clients in Europe and the Pacific Rim. And I didn't know about that last part, the international focus of what you do.
Well, occasionally I get, for example, I picked up clients, and obviously I've done some work for the Japanese government via their ambassadors here in council, things like that. So I've been overseas, done some stuff in Brazil. I've actually done some work on behalf of, over in the past years, I've been to Russia on behalf of Michigan State University, trying to work some coordinated efforts between some of the Russian government and the university on some potential work. So yes, I've gotten around the world. I've done a lot of work in Puerto Rico over the years. I used to be many years ago, the previous governors. I used to be doing research for the governor and did a lot of work on international trade for a lot of different groups.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm wondering, do you think that Puerto Rico will eventually become a state along with Washington, D.C.?
I think that's their goal. The difficulty here is the fact is not that they don't become a state. Well, obviously, Congress is what's bucking them becoming a state, mostly on the conservative side, not the more moderate Democratic side. The issue has been, when I was working there, is the fact that there are benefits of not being a state, and there's benefits being a state. And so what's happening with the whole issue of the hurricanes and the tornadoes and all the infrastructure losses, there's been more value if they were a state because of they could declare more bankruptcy and clean their over $70 billion in debt. No, I love Puerto Rico. I get there quite often when I can. It's a beautiful territory of the United States.
And what about D.C.? I mean, what are the odds on D.C. becoming a state? I know that the Democrats are pushing for that.
Well, there again, I think it's going to come down what does the Congress and the Senate do about the filibuster? Okay, I think if the filibuster is resolved more, so there's going to have to be you just can't say no to something and go on vacation. And I think there'll be a possibility that both the D.C. and Puerto Rico will be brought up for a vote. But I think as long as the filibuster is going to be hard to get both of them through. But I know Puerto Rico has been on top of people's mind, even a few Republicans. And then DC, that's more of a political issue. The fact is that the Republican side doesn't really want DC to have that much power, because that'll be another Democratic state that they don't want to see on the map.
Right. Well, we're going to jump into it in just a moment. Today's focus is obviously going to be about Detroit. This election cycle, there are some hot races happening in Detroit. Namely, the number one hot race is the race for mayor. You have an incumbent mayor in the form of Mike Duggan. He's the first white mayor since 1969. And he's now facing a challenger in the form of Anthony Adams, who announced his candidacy back in January. We're going to jump into that, and also the Detroit City Council races. There's going to be movement, it appears, on the City Council. We're also going to talk about redistricting and the gubernatorial race next year. Gretchen Whitmer So before we jump into it, what's brewing in your mug? I've got tea.
Well, actually, I'm a tea drinker too. Actually, I'm drinking Earl Grey with a hint of vanilla. So
Oh, very nice.
it's
Now,
a nice aromatic, and sometimes I put a little bit of lavender in it. But basically, it's like Andrew Picard. It's like tea hot Earl Grey. So
wow, fantastic. I'm an Earl Grey lover myself, but now did you add the vanilla or did it come that way?
actually, I buy it already loose, and they do mix the vanilla and the Earl Grey together. And sometimes you can add a little bit of lavender if you'd like.
Sounds yummy. Okay, well, that's a wonderful segue to jump right into this. Let's start with Detroit City Council race because that's interesting. The filing deadline is upon us next month, April 20th, I believe. And Target Insight conducted a poll last year, as I understand it. It was
No, actually, well, no, the mayor's race was last December. I've done multiple polls going on, but that was the base poll of both for the city council and that. But the city council was done earlier this year.
Oh,
And
okay. Was that okay? February 16th to 18th?
yes,
Oh, so that is very recent. And it's labeled, I'm looking at the survey myself, and it's labeled as a stratified random sample. For our audience, could you describe what a stratified random sample is?
the important thing when you do polling is your survey results reflecting the city's total voting population.
Okay.
And because Detroit has up to 136 neighborhoods, depending on how you classify neighborhoods, or 7 or 8 precincts, you have to be sure that each neighborhood, each city council district has its reputable, representation in the sample. So like if Northern Detroit votes 40% of the vote, then you got to have that 40% of your poll has to include that from Northern Detroit. And luckily for us in Detroit, you have the 7 city council districts, which helps. And you have some wards too. So you can actually help divide the city up. And then the other thing you have to look at, stratify and random, the fact is I'm not just picking on you. I just would call Tracy Mart every time I do a poll. Okay. It's so
Okay.
every person who has has a phone, whether it's electronically, either landline or cell phone, that they have a chance of the odds of getting called upon to participate in the survey. So it's stratified because it represents the whole city, and random because the fact is that it's trying to reach everybody equally, has an equal shot of being a participant in the poll.
That's fascinating. So you are using mobile cell phone numbers as well, because I know that was a concern a few years back. People wondered, most people are carrying cell phones, using smartphones. They don't even have landlines. So it's great to know that you're using.
Well, I just wanted to, but that's not totally necessary in Michigan as much as you would think. Okay.
Why not?
Let me explain. Is that in 2016 and 2020, 10 minutes after the presidential election was ended, both in 16 and 20, I called the presidential race and Senate races within 10 minutes after the polls closed. Those were all automated dial telephone calls, electronically done, not cell phones, because cell phones you have to call live. And I was off by 0.5%, showing Trump ahead of Hillary Clinton, and I called both Peters and Joe Biden by 10 after 9.
Wow.
I only interviewed 600 people statewide both times.
That's fascinating because, I picked up this factoid from PR Week US, and it talked about, I'm sorry for the dog barking in the background, guys, but that's my big German Shepherd Bella. I am in a booth. It's acoustic.
But you and Joe Biden's got your German Shepherds, I understand. So
Major and Champ, but they sent him back to Delaware after a little biting incident, I heard. Yeah. But PR Week US asked the question, is polling dead? And this was conducted on November 4th, 2020. And 59.9% of the respondents said, yes, it's a waste of time. This came up because there was a question about what happened with the surveys for the 2020 US elections. They were off. They said that it would be an easy win for Biden. There would be a Democratic pickup in the Senate and gains for the Democratic Party.
Well, there has to be some correction to the facts here. The talking heads said that, not the pollsters. Okay. There's a difference between the people who actually do the work of constructing a survey, conducting the survey, and those who talk about them. Okay. In 2016, I remember January 2016 saying Hillary was tied or going to lose to Donald Trump in presentations I did in Birmingham. Okay, I had a crowd of about 50 people. Okay, and never did I call Hillary was going to win. There's a difference between saying ahead and versus winning. Okay, Hillary never broke 50% in 2016, so thereby she was never going to win. Thirdly, Democrats can't win the Electoral College on average unless they beat the Republican by 4 more points in the popular vote. Okay, so Joe Biden was able to edge out that Electoral College effect because he had more. He was getting closer to 3 and 4 point advantage over Donald Trump in order to win the Electoral College. In the case of the Joe Biden and Donald Trump, the fact is that what I was saying, it was going to be close because of the issues, like, for example, polling in Macomb County. Hillary Clinton and Jennifer Granholm and Gretchen Whitmer have done nothing to convince Democrats that Democrats focus on jobs and the economy. Joe Biden did not spend a lot of time on that issue. So the fact it was going to be a very close race in here. In the case of Gary Peters, that race was going to be close because Gary Peters was invisible for most of the last 6 years prior to the election. But the polls showed it to be close. And we also showed in our polling in Michigan that about 12 to 16% of African Americans, specifically Black males, were going to be voting Democratic, which the same thing happened in 4 years ago. Now you hear all the talk about Blacks voting Republican. Well, we saw that for the last 3 years. So polling is accurate as the person conducting the polls and following the legitimate practice of how you do conduct research. Talking heads they always have to prove something's right. A lot of times they say Hillary's ahead, but I'm never going to say she's winning unless she's consistently over 50%. That's how you do polling.
Well, thank you for the correction and the clarification. So you were ahead of the trend there. Yeah, I've got some more questions about that, but let's circle back to the city council race. So the margin of error was plus or minus 5%, and a sample of 400, and these were registered voters that you
likely voters to be voting in this is focusing on the primary right now, in August primary, first of all. Okay. And we picked the people most likely that have been talked about running, because obviously they've gotten to almost, the day to file whether or not they're going to run or not. So we took the names that were most readily reticent. Okay. For example, Coleman Young is talking about it. He was encouraged to be running on the city council race. Andrew Spivey, who was looking to either pursue something outside of that because he was getting his law degree, and he was looking either to run for Congress or to run for large. And now I understand he's going back and run for his district in order to retain the city council district as an African representative, because he's got a couple of
District 4, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's on the east side of Detroit, and so there's someone else who's jumped into that race.
Matt Erler, the new free press writer is looking to. Yes.
Yeah, he's going to be on the show April 3rd talking about his candidacy, and apparently he is very serious. When we tried to book him on the show at a particular time, he said, well, I'm going to be out canvassing. Can we do it at another time? We said, sure. So this guy is out here, going door to door. Now that's going to be an interesting match. So
what's interesting is the fact that you brought that up. I remember when Andrew Spivey first ran the first time, and he says, well, the candidates running against her, Betty Cook Scott, was his first opponent. And I says, she has a shot at beating it. She said, no one knows who she is. Well, he was very young at the time, and he didn't know how well known she was in the community as a state representative. So Andrew Spivey understands he's got a tough race. He's learned some lessons, and Matt Erlich will work very hard. Okay. And you have a growing population of multiculturalism, whites in that part of the city. You've got a lot of redevelopment going on. And I would say that if Matt Erlich can get his name recognition up and get the door-to-doors done. For example, if for those who don't remember, State Representative, different representatives, white or black, you can win in Detroit if you do the door-to-door work. Okay.
Yeah, well, there hasn't been a white city council member since Sheila Cockrell.
That's correct.
2009, and that was it. And then the last
you got Leland,
council president. Oh, well, yes. Well, yeah, but he's out now. You're right. Thank you for correcting me about that. Before Gabe Leland, yes, it was Sheila Cockrell, Sheila Murphy Cockrell. 2009, I think, was when she was last in office. And then we had Gabe Leland, who's now out because he got indicted and he announced something about, I didn't crawl into office and I'm not going to crawl out, you know? And so
Well, I've started working for people listening. I've started doing polling and research and campaigns in 1972. Okay.
wow.
And so I've been at this since I was a freshman in college. Matter of fact, I started my business, which I own today, as a freshman in college. The girls' dorm was my first phone bank. And so,
How did you pick up your skills? Did you apprentice with someone or?
well, I was luckily because I have a double major in psychology and philosophy and minor in statistics. And I've always was curious about public opinion, what people think about it, and history. So when I got into college, the chair of the psychology department was also the school registrar in charge of school research, and was also working on his second or third PhD. I got adopted as his intern, so as a student, I was a sort of a paid employee of Aquinas College in Grand Rapids, allowing to do college research.
Okay.
And so in 1975, I was the pollster of record for the Van der Lee special election. I was polling for Dick Van der Veen way back then. Back in 75, 76, helped pay for my junior year in college was Debbie Stabenow when she ran for county commissioner.
Wow.
So and George Christenberry back in the 70s. I mean, John Watson, Kim Worthy, Benny Napoleon, Hill. I mean, I've worked for just about everybody in the county, different levels. And Mrs. Kilpatrick, when she ran for Congress, we had $30,000, and back then, Union Labor already left and asked us to work with her on our race, and we got her elected over Barbara Rose Collins. So I've had a long history of doing this and stuff, and so you begin to know people. And Gabe Lieberman's dad, for years, won in Detroit, and Coleman Young Sr. will tell you that Leland, his father, used to win because of the fact that he used to go door to door every year in the city of Detroit in the Black community. People looked at the fact he touched bases. So Matt Erler does what Burt Leland did, going door to door in Detroit. That's an opportunity for Erler to actually win in that district.
Yes. Canvassing does work. It is effective. Now, what about the Brenda Jones factor? Is that why Reverend Spivey's jumped out of that at-large race and going back to run in his district? And why did he jump out in the beginning to run at large? What did you hear?
Well, my understanding was he's looking for the next steps. He was finishing his law school degree. That's my understanding. And that he was being encouraged by a number of people, political figures, including like Sheriff Benny Napoleon, to run for Congress against Rashida Tlaib. Okay, and so he's looking for opportunities to move. And so I heard about the discussion about him interest in being motivated. There's some out-of-state money coming in, trying to influence city council races. Like the money that was spent, $700,000 against Kim Worthy, they want to spend it on city council to make it difficult for Mike Duggan to control the council. And so he was being encouraged to run for at large so he could step up the ladder if he wanted to run for mayor down the road, because Spivey also talked about running for mayor in the past. And so what happened is that there's been a push to encourage Brenda Jones to be sure that she does run this time. And also to the fact that there'd be some changes with Gabe Leland being gone. You got the potential, got John Bennett. You've got a lot of different candidates in the city here. Is that the power brokers are looking for who is going to have the smarts to run the city council. So Brenda Jones was encouraged to run again. The poll that we did on Coleman showing he came in second. So that's sort of put Spivey at a disadvantage, because the fact is that with Brenda Jones running again and Coleman Young comes second, there wouldn't be much room for Spivey to take on Coleman Young Jr. And the other concern is for a lot of people in the city, the fact that Janae Eyre, Labor has to decide, are they going to support her this time? Because the fact that she, like at her last time run, she has done much in the off year to build name recognition and support in the community.
So there are two at-large seats if Brenda Jones runs again. I mean, basically, she's a shoo-in with her name ID and her gravitas, her political gravitas. And if Coleman Young Jr. is polling in the number 2 spot, if she's in that race, I noticed he got 49% favorable in the poll that you conducted this past February. That's pretty high, right?
It is, and Janae Eyre, who's been around council for a number of years and supportive labor, does not have those numbers at all. And Coleman Young Jr. does have a machine. The biggest machine he has is his mom's Facebook pages.
Social media does work.
It does. Actually, she's got 2 social Facebook pages because you can't have them all on one page. And she does very well in the senior citizen. But I think what's going to be important, though, in this race, I think for your listeners, is that will we have the same turnout as we did last August because the influx of absentee voters?
That's what I want to ask you about. You know, when we were talking about national politics, did your firm factor in the mail-in ballots? I mean, yes, we know that the seniors typically vote absentee, but there was such a huge influx of people voting by mail because of the pandemic.
Well, the important thing is people understand that 40% better of Detroit voters already vote absentee. Okay. The question is, and Detroit's even higher sometimes. The question is, will there be enough interest of people under 45 to vote? Okay. And I'm not talking about seniors. I mean, typically, once you break 40, you typically want to be very active in the community. Okay. You're much more stable. You're doing things like so. The question is going to be in this mayor's race or city council race: are those people under 40 going to participate in the large numbers as they did last August? If they do, that could change some dynamics, especially in the council races. I don't know if it's going to affect the mayor's race per se, but I think some of those council seats could come in play this time around.
Under 40, though, that is millennial. I mean, those are the older millennials who are voting, and traditionally they haven't participated, but I don't know. Do you have the data on my millennial participation?
Well, it's been kind of lacking. It's been kind of lacking. Now, but I will have to say the one thing when we talk about Detroit and actually people of color communities all over the state and the country, it's predominantly the Black male that's the issue. Okay, Black females, especially in Detroit, do vote. They're very active. Okay.
Yes.
And the one thing I tell people that's very unique about, not unique for itself, but that one of the key reasons Detroit is alive today, because a lot of the Black women are the ones going on and getting higher education, they're getting the degrees, they're staying in the area, they're working, they're really progressing. It's a phenomenal thing. It's been an honor of mine to over the last 30, 40 years have engaged with young people, specifically the College of Black Women, how much he's committed to community, getting in post, taking over businesses, starting businesses. I think that's what's been the key to Detroit's ongoing success and hopefully in the future.
Well, if that's the case, why aren't we seeing more females running for Detroit City Council? I mean, we have the mainstays, Brenda Jones, Janie Ayers, who I find it fascinating, 65% never heard or had no opinion of Janie Ayers.
Well, I will be very honest with you on this. This comes down to name recognition, okay? Back in the 90s to about 2008, one of the things I used to do in Channel 7 and for the Free Press, I would predict in July who would win the city council race. People says, how can you do that? Because all I need to know what the council race members for name recognition where I could predict who is going to win in November. Really didn't. The election was over come July 1.
Wow.
And so what you have here, you have a lot of young, very qualified people in Detroit, like Miss Garrett, ex-state representative. Okay, but the problem is she doesn't have name recognition statewide, citywide. Secondly, with the reduction of labor involvement in the city, you don't have. What's happening, the fact is there isn't the financial resources or the machinery to provide people an opportunity to build name recognition and grow within the community. Now, Mike Duggan has tried to do that himself, like Coleman Young Sr. used to do, but the bigger force, the labor movement, has not invested the time and money and staff that they used to do. With Al Garrett retiring from his president post, and you've got Rory Gamble tied up with the federals trying to control the UAW. So what happens?
Gamble going to run for city council?
No. Roy, I don't think so. Roy Gamble, he's vice president at Ford Motor Company, okay, UAW. What I'm saying is, Roy Gamble, you had Jimmy Settles, you had Al Garrett, you had a plentiful of people who used to help young people run for office in Detroit. Either they're retiring, or they don't have the funds, or they're doing something else today. That's the reason why the youth in Detroit doesn't always show up on the screens, because they're there, but unless you get somebody to adopt you, okay, that's what makes it very difficult. Even under Mayor Archer, he had his people help go. I mean, it's very difficult for a young person in Detroit. Remember, you've got the city of Detroit is almost as big as the state of Rhode Island.
Yes, that's true. But what I don't understand is nobody adopted Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib per se. she used social media, became a force unto herself. Yes, she ran for state representative.
Well,
And
the other thing, the fact, right? The other thing is the fact is Rashida Tlaib, like Gary Peters, they had over $2 million to run for office.
she's a hell of a fundraiser.
Well, out of state, yes. Her community, she's got a large donor in California. She's got people statewide. She's got within the state. The difficulty is when you don't have name recognition, you have to have the funds be able to do that. The one thing I do, I helped Rashida run her first state house race, help her win when I was more involved in state house politics.
Okay.
She did the door-to-door stuff. She was meticulously door-to-door, 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 door-to-door. Okay.
Right.
She almost beat Virgil Smith when he was running for re-election for state senator. Okay, she did the work, and now with Detroit, the problem with now is because the 13th congressional district is a good portion of is outside the city. You have to. Most Detroit candidates have not built a base outside the city. Rashida built a base outside the city. Brenda Jones never built a base, nor did a base outside the city, and she even doesn't have a lot of support that she thought she had within the city. Same thing would happen with.
Right.
When Sharon McPhail ran against Ed McNamara, okay?
Well, but Ed, this is my point. We're in 2021. This is an age of technology, social media. Do you need the mentorship? You can mentor yourself and amplify your message and connect with constituents, with voters by door knocking, by using social media. What about using technology to get your name out there?
For example, I help people do and getting discounts on media ads and digital advertising because my associates here, we do about $10 million worth of business in Metro Area. So we were able to get great prices on digital media and TV ads, half of what people are paying typically. But the problem is, for example, like the current lieutenant governor, when he ran for against Janice Winfrey for city clerk, he raised $200,000, but he didn't have the $20,000 in August to get out the absentee voter mailing that he needed, and that's why he lost to Janice Winfrey.
Yeah.
So he did the digital media. He did the cell phone connects. We did everything we did for him. The problem was he didn't get that absentee mailing out the door in time, because when I was invited to participate in this race in June, he was only at 2%. So we went from 2% in June to getting through the primary and almost beating Winfrey. We raised the funds, but he didn't have the last minute funds to get over that name recognition over the older voter.
Well, now he's got all kinds of name recognition. He's the lieutenant governor, the LG, and we're going to talk about the gubernatorial race in a few minutes. But back to Reverend Spivey. Your survey says that, this is interesting to me, 63% never heard of him or had no opinion for somebody who had mayoral aspirations. I find that interesting.
Well, most people believe their own press releases. I will tell you that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. A lot of people don't realize how little people know them. There's a lot of people vote by council district or name their face or name they recognize. One of the rules and thumb in politics, I tell people, generally you can't win a race if people 70% either don't know your name, or 70% don't know your face. In competitive races, 70% of people have to both know your face as well as your name. And so in politics, that's why the door-to-door is so important. And that's why a lot of people don't win, because the fact is, well, I got my name all over, but people want to see your eyes. The one thing about Detroit, I tell people, what I appreciate about Detroit is they want to see you eye to eye before they vote for you. You have to earn the right to run. You don't. For example, Gary Peters, Senator Peters, and a lot of the, and Shirley Johnson, when she ran for Supreme Court, they don't understand the fact that they lost because, or Gary Peters did win, is the fact is that you have to earn the right to run in Detroit. You just don't.
You're talking about Judge Sheila Johnson.
Sheila Johnson, yes. And Mark Schauer, same problem. 60% of people didn't know who Mark Schauer was 2 weeks before the gubernatorial race in Detroit.
Yeah, they still don't know who he is. Now, back to your survey, this is the at-large seat. Arthur Blackwell, a name connected with Highland Park, I believe, 60% never heard of him or had no.
Well, there's amazing, for those of us who've been around like I have, and we're all getting old here, the fact I know Art Blackwell since I was a kid, okay?
Wow.
Because the fact he's been so involved in politics.
Okay.
from commissioner in Highland Park and affiliation with the Kwame family and working for, helping run campaigns and helping with Coleman Young and Mike Duggan Archer. He's been around forever, but the point being, he has not stayed relevant. He has his own radio show sometimes, but if you're not relevant, then it doesn't work.
Interesting. And also for the at-large seat, you surveyed the sample regarding Nicole Small, who is the current commissioner in Detroit, charter commissioner, and she's been vocal on some of the issues, facial recognition technology, everything having to do with the charter commission.
But she does not resonate with the public. She has not done anything that makes them important to them and their lives. Okay.
And according to your survey, 81% have never heard of Nicole Small and have no opinion of her.
Yes, and she's very active in politics. She's helped develop the messaging for Coleman Run when he's ran in the past, and I understand she's involved with Anthony Adams' campaign.
Really? Oh, that's
so the point being is that's what I'm hearing. I mean, I've not talked to her physically. What I'm saying is insiders know people, but remember, insiders are not the majority of the voters.
Correct. Right. I totally agree. Now, you mentioned John Bennett. Who are some of the other names that you've heard might jump into the city council races for the districts?
Well, right now, the Gabe Leland run is one that people are focusing on pretty much. Okay,
that's the 7th district, right?
The 7th, yeah, that's correct. Because that's a district that actually has a lot of players. Okay, you could have former representative and state representatives Harvey Santana if you want to get into the race. You've got Craig. You've got William. You've got another chief of police. You've got State Representative Winslet, I think her name is.
Karen Winslet.
Winslet, yeah, you have all these people talking about that seat. That seat is a district that can be won. It's competitive. That's the district that people of color, white and black, can win in that district because there's a mixture of Hispanics and blacks and different groups living in that community.
That's on the west side of Detroit.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But the reason I talk about John Bennett so much, the fact is that when he ran the first time against Gabe Leland, he was down. He lost like by 3,000 votes in the primary. He only lost by 50 points. I came in to help him take over his campaign for the general, and we got him within 50 votes and winning. And the only reason he lost that because Gabe Leland had to get a woman to run and just put her name on the ballot, and that cost him 50 votes. Otherwise, he would have been the current city council person.
Interesting. We're going to wrap this up in city council and move to mayor in a moment. But what about other names like the police commissioner, Bill Davis?
Bill Davis? Yeah, I've heard names like that. What's happening right now is, and I just, for those people who understand city politics, is that what's happening now in the closing weeks, you're going to see city government get involved in these races, okay?
Really?
You're going to have the mayor's office, you're going to have the president of the city council involved, you're going to have interest groups now getting involved. Who do they want to see run and win in these seats, okay? If I'm the mayor, I want a council that I can work with, okay? So when you have people that might go off to a different road, Council Member McAllister, great guy, but he's not always with Mayor Duggan. So if he loses a Gabe Leland or he loses a Brenda Jones, Mike Duggan says is who can I work with? So who does Duggan want in the 7th district? Okay,
Karen Winslet might have a shot because she has a good relationship with Mayor Duggan.
That is correct. What I'm saying is what you're going to find happening in the closing weeks. Who will get in or not get in, or will come down to fact is, well, who's going to finance who's going to help the person, who can help with the troops. If 2 years ago, well, it's going to be 2 years now, Mike Duggan helped a lot of state reps in their primaries get through the primary. So I would say that what's happening now is all the names are going to come out to the front. They're all going to be tried and true, tested, see who has the best shot at winning, who the committee interacted with, who can raise some funds. And then the power brokers and have been in the background saying is, who do we need to invest in? Who do we really think can help the city grow? And so they'll pick one of those people, and they're most likely they're going to get behind that candidate financially. But what's unique about John Bennett is he proved that not with all the money that he can almost win because he was willing to go door to door and do the mail. When I worked with his campaign, everything we talked about, he did. The mailing, the door to door, the phone calls. He worked hard. He raised money. Okay.
That's very coachable as a candidate.
That's very good. So, but you got Mr. Davis or you got the state rep. They all have the quality. What's going to come down is who does the machinery, the mayor's office, the city council president want to see get in that seat to help work getting to the job done in the city?
Do you believe that all the incumbents are going to run for their seats again? Like, for example, Raquel Castaneda Lopez, she had some issues with the council dealing with them and said that she actually experienced discrimination.
The question is going to be is what are her options? Okay, the one thing I think that when I look at a person in Detroit, especially like Ms. Lopez, what I've seen her do in her part of the city, okay, it's phenomenal. Okay, the community work. I know her from when she first started office. The question be, it's going to be hard for her to give up that seat. Okay, not because she wants the politics, not because of egos, because she likes what she's doing. Okay. You know, and I can go down to the Delray area of the city and what it's like when I was a kid, going on Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning, getting a cup of tea, going to a market, having, walking in the neighborhoods, going to the park. That's what I remember in Detroit. We enjoyable. The city's grown. She's done a lot of work in that area. So it's going to be hard for her to leave, not because of politics or money, it's because of the fact she loves what she does.
It'll be interesting to see if ML Elric pulls off a win in that 4th district. It is going to be tight if there's going to be an incumbent. And I say that because I remember once ML Elric did a story on council member Raquel Castaneda Lopez. It was none too flattering regarding one of her properties in South.
Yes, well, that Erler and Charlie LaDuff are the ones that you don't want to be tangled with because they have the ability of the word. Right. And but I would say Spivey has to be very careful. Councilman Reverend Spivey has to be careful because the fact, like with Roberta Scott, the fact that if he takes it for granted, Matt Lark is a hard worker. Okay, he knows what he has to do. Okay, if you can get his name recognition, because I always tell people, in fact, the one thing you have to understand about Detroit. People of color grew up voting for white people, okay, in Detroit. So it's not just something they're against voting for white people. Matter of fact, some of their fondest memories was Mayor Kavanaugh. So it's not like the older voter has a problem with white representation, okay?
Also, Marianne Mahaffey, who was the council president, yes, city council president.
Yeah, for a long time. Yeah, so yes. I'm saying the fact is that, so color in Detroit, we got to remember, up until about 15 years ago, the largest white population resided in the city of Detroit. Okay. And the white population is growing back up. And as a matter of fact, the white population is coming back into the city. Okay.
That's an interesting dynamic.
Yes, it is.
Before we pivot, though, to the mayor's race, Virgil Smith Jr., I understand he's finished up his probation. Do you think he may throw his hat in the ring for a Detroit City Council seat?
He has been. I can't go into particular details. There are financial backers of want to have a change in city council. I know that have been talking to him and a few others to get into the race. Okay. And like I said, they raised about $700,000 against Kim Worthy. They raised a ton of money in the Oakland County, the prosecutor's race. So I would think the fact that I know that he's been talked about it. I know he got active.
County?
Pardon? Oakland County, yeah.
Okay, Karen McDonald. So they were
yes.
yeah.
Right. Okay. And so, and I know Rashida Tlaib is trying to get people involved in the city council race. Rashida wants to make her own little fiefdom too. So you got all these people. What I'm saying is that she has access to money. The Bernie Sanders crowd, the more far right left people are involved in the city. They took on Kim Worthy. I was involved in Kim Worthy at the end because the fact I helped her run the first time. So in fact, we stopped that loss for Kim Worthy. But the key thing is that there are people out there. I know Virgil Smith has talked about. There's been a number of other names mentioned. The question is in Detroit, because the fact is now we're getting down to who do the people who want to help people want to see win. Okay. So they're going to they're going to go around and make, for example, I've been around in Detroit, and whether it's Chicago, Detroit, St. Louis, in the end, the Virgil Smiths of the world and the John Bennett's going to be talking to the mayor's office, to be talking to the council president, to be talking to the union leaders, all different groups. They're going to see where they're going to get their most support, both financially as well as support with troops on the ground.
Interesting. But before we go to the mayor's race, what I found fascinating about your survey also is the number of undecideds, which really coming in at the number 2 spot regarding some of these questions. Combined first and second choice council member at large, 26% were undecided or unsure.
Yes. Well, that's because the fact there's the lack of name recognition. Okay. And if they know their name, they don't know their face. Okay.
Okay, backed it up.
It's back it up, and I think if you go back to the Mike Duggan campaign policy, was Crystal McKnight was I think the ex city attorney, okay, that ran for mayor. And I probably never wrong. The point, she almost won. Matter of fact, when Mike Duggan got in trouble, polling showed that
Oh,
she
you're
could
talking about Crystal Crittenden.
Crystal, yes, here, Crystal Crittenden, excuse me, Crystal Crittenden. Well, Crystal Crittenden, if Duggan's basically Crystal Crittenden would probably be mayor today if Duggan had stayed out of the race.
Wow. And we
Okay,
would have had our first mayor in the city
yeah,
of Detroit.
yeah. And let me explain why did that happen? Because the fact is that her problem is that the inability to make the phone calls to raise money. Number two, her name was everywhere. If you remember back then, all those lawsuits and she basically
Lisa House was in that race, and actually Crystal Crittenden wiped the floor with Lisa House.
Yeah, well, yes, and Crystal Crittenden, yes, and Lisa House the one that did that Super Bowl ad, but
right.
But the key thing with Crystal,
by the way, that Super Bowl ad was partially shot at my law office.
Right, and I also know who one other mayoral candidate helped fund that ad.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Okay, another mayoral candidate helped. Yes. The important thing is this: Crystal Crittenden would have been mayor today if Duggan had not decided to pursue the right thing. In fact, the polling, tracking I was doing every week for labor and businesses entities, because of the work, her name was everywhere on the lawsuits. She had the grassroots campaign. Benny Told was not doing the door-to-door stuff that he should have, even though he's well known. So the bottom line is her problem was the money and the fact that they didn't know her face. They knew her name, but they couldn't connect with it. Okay. So there's a case where the news media helped Crystal Crittenden, but she didn't have the name recognition or the funds to move it to the next level. But I remember some business groups began to talk to her, look to her to replace Mike Duggan as their choice for candidacy after Mike Duggan might not make the ballot.
Interesting. Okay, so now we will pivot to the mayor's race. You did a survey last year.
And I've done other ones, but those are the ones that I've released publicly. I've done about 3 other polls, but that's the one that's
publicly released. But I find this fascinating because the focus is on the primary election, which will be held in August of this year, 2021. The same sample size, 400, same margin of error, plus or minus 5%.
Yes.
Another stratified random sample, 100% are likely registered voters.
Yes.
And number one, 78% favorable, Mike Duggan.
Yes.
I mean, is this even going to be a race? I mean, look back at 2017 when Coleman Young Jr. ran. Some said at that time maybe he would have been better off running for city council like he's doing this year.
Well, here's the issue I think that's important. And when I look at back these races, and I make mental diaries and writing diaries why people won or lost. Okay. The best example where we're at in this race is we got to go back to the Freeman Hendrick race versus Kwame Kilpatrick race. Okay.
Yes.
And I bring that up because the fact is Freeman Hendrick should have won that race, but he didn't tell people what he was going to do once he got elected. Okay.
So he had no platform?
No, he did not. It was get rid of Coleman Young. Okay.
Oh, that's a mistake, isn't it?
Okay. When Coleman Young ran the last time, he really didn't have anything to say what he's going to do once he becomes mayor. Okay. Same thing when he ran for Congress. The difficulty is these people understand is that I understand the need of the pushing of Anthony's pushing, gain respect and all that kind of stuff. But in the end, when I talk to Detroit voters, whether it's focus groups or in polling or whatever like that, or when I'm in the city, it still comes down to bread and butter issues. Okay.
Right.
How you can put food on my table? Where do I get access to jobs? When we poll for the Black Caucus, Detroit Black Caucus, we poll Black males. Okay. Their biggest issue, the fact is they don't feel they have the tools to be successful. Okay. It's not a question about respect. No, if they got a job, they have respect. If they can feed their family, they got respect. They're looking for the tools to be gainfully employed, move ahead, or have access to the insiders, I think. So what people are looking for, the reason why Duggan has got his numbers of fact is because whether you like him or not, look how many labor groups, look how many churches now are all supporting Mike Duggan, okay?
Yeah.
Because the fact is that whether you like him or not, he does get things done. You may not like everything he's done, but he does get things done, okay?
Do you think that this will be his last run as mayor, or could he reign for you know, decades, like former Mayor Coleman Young.
I think that depends on a lot of things. I think one is if the federal prosecutors don't keep coming after him with the demolition buildings, the stuff
Oh,
with fundraising, all those different things stated aside. Obviously there's things you and I know behind the scenes, but we're not going to say here on air. But the point being is the fact that if those things go away or stay away, and he feels he can be successful, I think what's going to determine him is the same thing what happens in Dearborn. Okay, in Dearborn, once the big three decide you're as mayor, you no longer are doing your job, the mayor steps down. Okay,
you're out.
in Detroit, once the Jim Nicholsons, the Quicken Loan people decide that Mike Duggan is not doing his job, Mike Duggan will be asked to be stepped down.
Okay,
That
got
answer
it.
your question?
Yes, thank you. Very succinct. But a name from the past has reappeared, and I just find that interesting because it's a female politician, Sharon McPhail, 38% favorable rating per your survey. Certainly, it's nowhere in the ballpark with Duggan, but respectable compared to the other names. Well, Mary Sheffield came in at what, 44% favorable. She's not ready yet, is she? She's on the
Well,
city council doing a good job in the 5th district.
well, the question is the fact some people don't know if it's her or her dad. Okay,
Oh,
a lot of people like Mary more than they like her dad. Okay,
so he's like
and
the Wizard of Oz behind the
yes,
scenes,
behind the scenes, that type of thing. Now, Mary's a hard worker. Don't get me wrong. Okay, but there are people that like Mary, but they don't like. And the other thing, for example, with Mary, there's things that people don't like the way she runs her office. Okay, one thing
Oh,
I have to. The one thing that I do, I try to find out what's the word on the street. Okay, how are
yeah.
the councilmen running their or council person running their office? What's the word on the street? Mary does a great job, but there are some things people don't like about the way she runs her office. Okay, that's distracting. Okay,
Mm,
and one is like Andrew Spivey, how do you build citywide name recognition? Okay, when you look to Sharon McPhail, as I mentioned to you in a previous conversation, when she ran the first time when Coleman Young was stepping down like my Archer, I was asked to help her run her campaign, be involved in her campaign. Okay. Very prominent, but as you remember that case back when you were a very young woman, okay, uh, uh, she's
cool.
put her foot in her mouth on some issues on schools and education and her kids. Remember that whole debate?
Right.
Okay?
Yes,
So,
she has baggage, but I don't. Voters have short memories and they don't remember
what
that.
I'm saying is, but what I'm saying is she has done very well. I mean, she's been well respected in cases before the Supreme Court. She's
Yeah.
been respected. There's obviously been some mistakes she's made here and there and things that she's done, but overall, she came close to beating McNamara,
Right.
Bradford County exec. So she's a well-known quantity. She was on city council.
She had that
Uh,
campaign. You go, girl.
well, she does. Well, she's back in the era of the hats on the city council.
Yeah, that's right. The
You
hat.
remember that, the era of the hats? That was stylish, man. It was really stylish,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it was very well dressed city council at that time. But
yeah.
the point being is she was well respected. She's known. She's been around. Yes, there's been some baggage here and there, but there's still the word on the street, the fact that she's done a job. When she's asked to do a job, she gets it done. Not always perfectly, but she's well known, and that's why she's still there on the list. And so she still has some roots left in the city.
There's this trend across the country where you have Black females in particular who are leading major cities across the country. Keisha Lance Bottoms in Atlanta,
Yes.
and Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago, and Muriel Bowser in D.C. and New Orleans. The list goes on and on and on. When is Detroit going to get a female mayor who's, viable?
I will tell you. I will tell you this: as soon as there's somebody in the business mind, and I don't mean black business, white business. I just don't mean white business owners. Okay, are convinced that that person can do the job that they think Mike Duggan's doing. That's when it's going to happen because they'll get behind that woman 100%. Because the one thing I've learned in Detroit, in the business population, big business, small business, there's not a gender bias when it comes to supporting a candidate. If the candidate's good, they're going to be there. Okay. The difficulty's been is finding someone that they can trust. Now, Lisa Howe has been beginning to build more of a reputation, but when she started running that first one-time mayor, she didn't have the base of support. But the mayor hired her on to the head office. She's got some other things, so you got people like her, okay. But she needs support, okay. Sharon Gay Nago. Well, once
I was going to ask you, Sherry Gay Degnogo.
no, okay. Well, there's a person who was on the rise, but as
Right.
Labor's left the city, her base of support and finances is gone. Okay.
Oh,
Okay, well, I say Sherry. I've known Sherry since the first time she was state rep because I was there. I used to meet her. We used to meet at Fishbones when Ted Caceres was still alive. Okay, so I used so all these people, that's like I'm saying. I'm even though people think I'm Greek, I'm not. I'm Lithuanian, but Ted says he's my Greek.
You were Greek until
no, Sarpolus. Well, Ted says you're my Greek Lithuanian, so he called my friends. He's my favorite Greek, but
cool.
but Sherry had a great start. But her problem, like with many other people and the people of color community or women, the fact their support went away. Al Garrett retired. Okay, other labor groups retired. So she's well known. She's worked very hard. She made state rep. But what's going to move her to the next level? Where does that happen? Okay, and that's the difficulty because I tell people when I do meetings in Detroit, it says Black business leaders don't support their own people enough when it comes to running for office. Okay. They're not there. Al Garrett was there. You know that, okay? Roy McGann was there. But outside of those people, I don't see a lot of Black business owners in Detroit getting behind the people. I see a lot more support among Hispanic business owners helping people in the community, but I don't see the Black community leaders doing what they need to do to get that person to the next level, okay?
That's an interesting observation because your survey indicates that regarding Sherry Gay Deknogo, 62% never heard of her or have no opinion. So that's not very good.
It's not good, but statewide, she's well known in news media. She's been very visible, very vocal on issues. Okay. She represented Detroit very well in the thing. The mayors knew her, but the point being, how do you get your name known back home? That's the big problem.
Right. Interesting. And same for Portia Roberson, only 73%, according to your Target Insight survey, 73% have never heard of Portia Roberson or have no opinion. And she's the CEO of Focus Hope right now.
Right. But you and I know who she is because we know the people. Yes. We know what's important to say. You and I know, but the question is, how do you get outside of that tent? Okay.
Right.
People says, how do you live in Lansing? So people in Detroit, because I says, I make it my point to know people in Detroit. I'm active. I come to Detroit. I do a meeting in Detroit. I says, but that's not all the residents of the city of Detroit. They all have their own lives. Okay.
You have Detroit roots, but now let's talk about Anthony Adams, because until he made his announcement in January that he's running for mayor, this is really like a sleeper campaign, very boring. But he's an attorney. He's a former deputy mayor like Freeman Hendricks, but he got the Freeman Hendricks effect in terms of messaging. He has a lot of good ideas. He was on Politico Coffee a few weeks back, and he seems pretty fiery, but in terms of the survey, 58% have never heard of Anthony Adams.
Well, the other thing that I've noticed with Anthony Adams, I know his fieriness, and he's upset with my poll, by the way. I know that the word got back to me. He's upset with my numbers, but the point being, his race sounds a little bit of a repeat of Coleman Young Jr.'s campaign. Okay,
but I got to jump in here. Now, I asked him a specific question about the whole Tale of Two Cities narrative, which is what Coleman Young Jr. ran on back in 2017 against Mike Duggan. Obviously, it didn't resonate, and he stopped and he said, "No, that's not my message. My message is about inclusion." About
that's the same. You're using different words. It's different words to say the same thing. It's what I'm saying is I'm a hired gun. My job is to come in and defeat a candidate, win a candidate, all that kind of stuff. But the point being is, I look at Anthony Adams, learn what happened to Coleman, learn what happened to Freeman and Hendricks. Okay, why did Duggan win? Okay, why is the fact is because the people in Detroit are no different than the people in Grand Rapids, white people in Macomb County. It's about bread and butter. Right now, they're hurting. 40% of Black businesses are gone. Okay.
Yeah, because of the pandemic. Yes.
Academic. Okay. I know 15 of my friends in Detroit have died because of the COVID. Okay. So the question is, what's your plan? If you become mayor, to rebuild the businesses, be sure these people don't have to leave the city, have their kids come back. What's your plan for that? Okay.
Well, I mean, that is part of his messaging. He's talking about, grants and loans for.
That's not going to help them on day one. The point being, Duggan had a plan for day one of what he was going to do. Well, whether he was able to deliver on that's a different story.
Right.
It's like what was Joe Biden's message when he told you what he's going to do day one to make a difference?
Well,
okay. What with Anthony? If Anthony Adams listening, he says, Anthony, what are you going to do day one to make a big change in Detroit to see people have an impact? You're becoming mayor day one. He has to define what that's going to be.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned POTUS. A Gallup poll says that he's really enjoying some great ratings right now. 6%.
It go away very
across the board
quickly.
favorability, and among Democrats is all the way up to 70%.
Yes. But
So,
he delivered on, but he delivered, he said what he's going to do day one, and he delivered on it, and it was major. Okay. Mike Duggan, in his own way, delivered on something when he came in office. Okay. The question is Anthony Adams has to come up with something. What is his going to be, his Mike Duggan, POTUS's message, what he's going to do on day one for people to see a difference within the first 100 days?
what about the debate factor? If there were to be a primary debate, which I highly doubt, or a debate closer to the general election, and Adams performs very well with his messaging and his overall performance, is that going to make a big difference?
It always helps. It will help. I will say that it does help. The one thing we know from debates that Mike Duggan can lose his temper. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing Benny Napoleon learned. Mike thing. The key thing for Anthony Adams is the fact is that having a good debate and winning the debate are two different things. Okay. For example, Kwame lucked out with Gil Hell looking like he was going to fall asleep in the debates. Okay. He wasn't in tune like that. And I remember that type of debate. So Anthony Adams, I think, yes, can you win a debate? Yes. But are you won it to the point it's going to make a difference? Freeman Hendrick won the debates, but the point being he didn't have a plan. What I'm saying is if I'm going to run a mayor for Detroit, what am I going to do day one is going to make a difference?
Well, one thing I will say about Anthony Adams is he says he's not prepared to roll out his plan. It's too early. He doesn't want people to steal his ideas. So maybe we're in store for, more details about his plan.
I've heard that every time I've heard that from candidates, they don't generally win.
Oh, okay. Well, interesting. Well, listen, we've only got a few more minutes. I know you've got to run, but what about the gubernatorial race next year? It's been really quiet. I remember, the year before the election, the gubernatorial election, it was quite hot. You had Whitmer in the race, Sri Tanadar, who's now state representative, Dr. Abdul El Sayed, Bill, there was another one. I can't.
Oh yeah, you had Bernstein, Hackle.
Oh, Bernstein, right? Yes.
Yes.
He was,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's but what's going on?
Oh, here's what's going on right now. Are there talks going on right now? Yes, there are talks going on right now. Okay. Matter of fact, there was a meeting of some power brokers last week in Metro Detroit. Okay. Here's what's going on right now. As long as COVID's on people's mind, people believe that Gretchen will probably win. Okay. If COVID goes,
lockdowns and this, scandal about the confidentiality that is lingering, and Charlie the Duff's lawsuit, the Sunshine lawsuit, FOIA about the nursing home issue. I mean, is she going to get Cuomo'd? What? Well,
first of all, it has to happen first. Okay.
Okay.
You got to remember is the fact is that Don Riegel, when he ran for re-election, and he was caught with having encounters with his secretary in his office. They played the actual tape of him in the office, and he still won. Okay.
Yeah.
Jerry Springer basically took a city check and paid a prostitute, and it bounced because they didn't have a check, and he got reelected as mayor of Cincinnati. Okay. So
what about Marion Barry? I mean,
Marion Barry.
Right,
well, I like Marion Barry because it also is a good serve from out west if you can put on your pancakes. That's why I like Marion Barry, because I remember that when I went out to Washington to get my pancake syrup. But the point is this. Okay, right now, outside of Candace Miller, if she would get in the race, the Republicans don't have a natural heir apparent. Okay. There is no Bill Schuette.
John James, though. He ran huge last year. Almost beat Gary Peters. Now he's got all this name ID, name recognition. I mean, he could be a formidable candidate on the Republican side.
He would have to give up his loyalty to Donald Trump.
Oh, okay. I think he already has, though.
Well, yes and no. Okay. Yes and no. Okay. Because the point being, he would have a primary. All right. And in a primary, you're going to need money. Okay. And you got Lee Chatfield. He's a
non-fundraiser, though. He raised a lot of money in the last election cycle.
Yeah, but that was helped. He's a hard worker, yes. And the only reason it was a close race because of Gary Peters ran a very poor campaign, which I said in New York Times weeks before the election. Okay. And so that was because of that. The point being is that John James is well known and done very well. But if right now, COVID-19 people are giving kudos to the mayor, not the people who run the businesses or the lockdowns, but the people in the street. Okay. Now, if COVID goes to the side of it, then the mayor's going to understand why you never got anything done on the roads. Okay. You never did anything real on
Fix
the
the
auto
damn
insurance.
roads.
Yeah, you've done nothing on auto insurance that you said you're going to do. You got some insurance, but the Republicans won on that victory. Outside of COVID, she doesn't have what I call bread and butter victories. Okay. That could mean something. So they could be very competitive. Right now, everybody's saying, how long is the COVID mystique going to last? Okay. And if it lasts, then it's going to be very difficult to beat her. Okay. If there's any hint of that weakness, because the meetings that happened last week with some power brokers on the Democratic side, they know her weaknesses. Okay. It's the COVID's keeping her strong right now. Okay. And so that's what she's counting on, because so what's going to happen? Because remember, the other thing is there's a big investment in her. Big business is not destroying that. Remember, big businesses came to her aid to help her get elected. Okay.
Right.
Republican donors. I know one chief fundraiser that raised $6 million for Bill Shooting, who ran for AG, raised the same $6 million for Gretchen Whitmer for her to go. He switched parties. Okay. Because there's a vested interest. So there is a vested interest in Gretchen. Okay.
Yeah,
and
that reminds me. She has already raised about $5.5 million for her.
Yes,
campaign.
and you're asking, right? She's connected to money too, which helps in the business community. And as long as business worked with her on the COVID stuff. And the other thing that the other thing that you have to be concerned about, the fact the party out of power tends to win the gubernatorial races. And so that's the one thing you got to be concerned about for Gretchen. The fact is that if Biden does very well and he continues going, then it won't hurt him. Okay. But the point, if Biden starts to slip, like in past history, then Gretchen could have a tougher race. But Gretchen's in a good position right now. She needs some victory, bread and butter issues, that type of thing. And the other thing that I'm going to have to say, and because most of my clients have been Democrats in my life, I do have Republican clients. Whether it's Gary Peters, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, all the candidates, they don't tend to focus on Wayne County and Detroit. It's just a passing thought. Races keep getting closer and closer and closer, because with only 78% of blacks saying that they're willing to commit to being Democrat, the other 22% say they're leaning Republican or something else.
That's interesting.
And as they leave Wayne County and Detroit, as they move into Oakland County, they're more independent, become Republican. As they move out to Westland, they become more Republican. So unless the Democrats continue to start focusing more on the black folk, Southern Macomb County, growing black population.
Well, speaking of Macomb County, what about the Pete Lucido, who's won that election for prosecutor? The whole Me Too stuff did not stick to him. He's gunning for Gretchen Whitmer regarding the whole, I think it's a nursing home issue. So does he have gubernatorial aspirations?
I think his
where he is.
The problem with him, in fact, is he's still got that. If they reopen that closet of his, okay, he's got some issues he's got to address with. I know he's going to have fun with the governor. I don't know whether or not the party would support him because of what happened in the last couple of years with the whole, accusations of issues on the women's side of things like that. That could end up hurting him. Okay. But Pete Lucido is doing his job. Because remember, Pete Lucido may want to go on to a higher office and something else, or run for Congress. Remember, we got redistricting coming up. Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up, because we can close with that. I mean,
yes.
I know that the Michigan Independent Redistricting Commission, they've been meeting on Zoom, but that census information hasn't come in yet. I heard it's going to hit in the summer. They're going to be working like crazy to.
This is a little bit of an insider stuff. You appreciate this, okay?
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Is that redistricting itself could be done within 30 to 60 days if all the data was available. Okay.
Really? Wow.
Yes. I'm drawing plans right now. So the point being is depending on what rules are the fact, that's the easy part. The question is the politics of the plan. Okay. For example, the Grosse Points don't want to be in the Detroit district, but they want to be in the Macomb County district. But they're a community of interest. That's what this may say. We're community of interest. Well, you're only community of interest as long as it doesn't hurt me developing the second black African American seat that I have to go to Macomb County to pick up the African American vote. Okay. Number two, the commission wants to draw a fair and balanced plan. Well, you want to be nonpartisan. Well, if you're nonpartisan, how can you draw a fair and balanced plan? You have to have political data. So now they're going to have to involve politicians and that kind of stuff. Okay. Thirdly, okay, the point being they hired their vendor to help them with their computers and their technology. He has spent since 1980, which he helped draw he's a Democratic vendor for most of his life. He helped the Democrats with the redistricting in Michigan in 1980 and 1990 and 2000. Kim Bray. So if they're nonpartisan, they hired one of the most good vendor. I know the vendor all his life. I know Kim Bray is a very good guy.
Okay.
But the point being is that the politics of this nonpartisan political thing is what's going to make this issue difficult, not the issue of drawing the lines. It's the kind of type of thing. And I'm willing to come back on your show when I get some more maps together, basically what could be drawn. Okay.
That would be great.
Yeah, we can have maps and you can put those up, because the point being is we're going to lose a congressional district, which means the fact is that one of the 14 seats is going to go away. Okay.
That's a done deal. So I don't personally remember, but I know the history. At one time, Michigan had 19 congressional districts.
It did.
Back in 1970. And we've been steadily losing because we've been losing population.
Or did not grow enough. Or if you go back to the turn of the last century, the fact all the districts had spokes coming out of Detroit. So,
well, what would happen hypothetically? We have Rashida Tlaib in the 13th congressional district and Brenda Lawrence in the 14th.
Those are pretty much going to. The point being, right now, I've got a couple of plans I've drawn. I don't have to change the plans almost any bit for Rashida's district or Brenda Lawrence's district. The district's going to get probably 60, 70,000 people larger, but that means Brenda Lawrence, instead of taking Pontiac, she'll move into southern Macomb County, eliminating the 11th seat. Basically, Rashida Tlaib will go further into Wayne County. Debbie Dingell. Here's a little thing. Debbie Dingell there's talking a thing that Debbie Stabenow is going to step down U.S. Senator and have Whitmer appoint Debbie Dingell as the next U.S. Senator.
Thanks for the juicy tidbit. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's the talk. I mean, they're all going to deny this, but I've heard it now over the last 6 months multiple times from different sources. But what they're saying is Debbie Dingell's pick up more of Ann Arbor, okay, and more into Washington County.
Well, what would Debbie Stabenow do? Is she just done with politics, or she would go into the private sector, or what?
Well, since 1975, when I started working for her, and she doesn't like to admit that we know each other because then we tell our ages. Okay, the fact is that she's always had a lot of aspirations. She's used to run a center outside of Kalamazoo for think tank type of thing. She's a very productive lady. She's done the Magic Ride was one of her part of her creations. Raising money, things like that. As a state rep, she had more staffers than anybody else in the legislature because she had all this fundraising that she did through other events. She's a very active person. I always got the impression of the fact that she didn't want to spend her whole life, in D.C. Part of her life, she wanted to do good in D.C. Now, obviously, if they gain more power in the Senate, she might be influenced to stay on. Okay. We'll see what happens in November, but I do know there's some talk on that. But maybe if she gets a chairmanship and the Democrats pick up an additional Senate seat, then maybe she'll stay on. But she may not. If she thinks it's tight, and she doesn't take the control, then maybe she may step out earlier and give it to Debbie Dingell to have Gretchen point the replacement.
But if we lose a congressional seat, that means we lose the electoral vote.
Yes.
That means less money, right?
It can help. What hurts us is influence. That doesn't mean we're necessarily going to lose money because the fact that that's based on population. Okay. But for example, we won't have a vote to stop something taking our water from the Great Lakes. Okay.
Oh, wow.
We may not be able to control the amount of pollution. For example, like pollution that comes from other states to from east to west, that type of thing, or protecting our auto industry. So we lose influence. We lose power. Money coming to the states more depend upon population base. Yes, obviously there's been talking about the Christmas tree effect, getting to get bills passed out of the Congress like it used to be 12 years ago, from 2010. So maybe that will come back a little bit, earmarking dollars for the states. So yes, having more congressmen and senators helps you, but you're only going to have 2 senators anyways. But the point being is redistricting is coming along. I think could be the Democrats could get this plan could go 9-4 Republican, 9-4 Democratic, depends on how the plans are drawn, independent and nonpartisan district or not. The state Senate, it'll be hard to make the state Senate more Democratic. The state House could be more competitive. But the big issue is going to be they're going to have to decide what rules they're going to draw the lines by. Okay. That's what will dictate everything. But unless the voting rights laws changes, I think it'd be hard pressed for the commission to eliminate one of the black seats.
That's fascinating. And those new maps, those new state and federal legislative lines are going to go into effect next year, right? 2020?
Yes, 2022. Yes.
Wow. Well, that's right around the corner. Well,
Now
Ed,
that gives you plenty to cover. You have all these people running in new seats and new districts and primaries and term limited. You'll have
yes.
senators, all that kind of stuff. It'll be a lot of debate whether or not more people want Detroit districts going into another county. Okay. The only
Interesting.
district that won't change much will be Jack Berman's district coming out of the UP because he can't go into Lake Superior and you can't go any further north. So his district is pretty much going to stay the way it is.
Okay, well, you've heard it straight from Ed Sarpolus, the top polling and public opinion expert. And thank you so much for joining us today on
My
Political
pleasure.
Coffee and your time. And yes, we'd love to have you come back. And next time, Attorney Robin McCoy will be with us and we can talk about redistricting more. But thank you so much for watching, everyone. You've been listening to Political Coffee. Happy spring, everybody. And please remember to like and subscribe. Thanks again, Ed. We'll talk.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Take care now.